Recording. Hello, world. My name is Sunny. I am host of Taboo Talk. That's where you are watching right now. We are the safe space for exploring the edge of the status quo. And the topic for this week is called Me First. We're going to look at things like self-care, self-love, really no agenda for the conversation. It's going to be free form. We're going to really look at what does it mean to put me first and all of the malarkey that might come with that. I host Taboo Talk because I want to give you a way to see all of these different perspectives on a taboo subject in a way that's safe and gives you access. So this isn't a debate forum. We're not going to engage with any negativity in the chat room. If you're in the chat room and you have a question, you're going to want to put a /Q before it. It'll show up in the white area so we can address it. Other than that, feel free to go crazy in the chat. For my guests, guys, if you see something happening in the chat that you want to talk about, make sure you repeat it so that people who are listening later know what you're referencing, because they can't always see the chat in line with what we're talking about. So just make sure if you read anything, that you read it out loud before you respond. And other than that, we're just going to sit here and have a free-form conversation about putting me first for as long as it seems interesting. So I have three awesome guests this week, some that I know, some that I don't. So we have Amy Nowakowski, who I know fairly well. We have Paul Sanders, who I've met in the past 6 months or so online. And then Maya, who I was just introduced to this week. So all varying levels of relationship to me. So I'm very excited for today. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves. I will start with Paul. If you could just tell us who you are, a little bit about what you do, maybe where you're at geographically, pertinent details, and why you wanted to be here today.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Am I echoing?
No, you're good.
Okay. I live in Chicago with my wife. I'm a software developer, and I think the reason I wanted to join today, was really just because I've been there a lot. I felt entitlement a lot. I've tried to work through it. So hopefully, maybe from that perspective, I can share some of kind of what I've learned and like what I still struggle with. I think as we all do, and help out that way.
Awesome. Is his sound going in and out for you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you have a headset or something you can plug in, it might help. It also might be that you're putting your hands on your microphone and we're hearing you go in and out. Yeah. I think we heard enough of what you said, but just to give you increased quality for the rest of the conversation.
Yeah, I think this might help if I get it a little closer and put this in.
Awesome sauce. While he's figuring that out, Maya, you want to tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, my name's Maya Matzek, and I am a personal liberation coach. So I'm really excited about this conversation because the work that I do with high-achieving women who feel stuck and stressed and like they're just meant for something more, even if they can't quite say what that is, a lot of times it's because they're putting themselves last or not even including themselves in the conversation. And I always like to include this statistic. It sounds a little morbid, but I really appreciate it, that the #1 regret of people who are dying is that they wish they had had the courage to live life as their true selves and not according to somebody else's standards. And I feel like we're going to be hitting on that in this topic of me first.
Definitely. Definitely. Awesome. Amy, last but not least, who you be?
Who I be? My name is Amy Nowakowski, and I'm a digital marketing consultant here in New York, although my clients are all over the world. And why I'm here or excited to be part of this conversation is, when you start your own business, you kind of put everything, the business comes first, right? And you tend to be like smooshed into this tiny little corner of, I'll get to it later, or when my client work is done. So I'm kind of on this personal quest right now, or it's not even a quest, just this experience of since I'm of a certain age now, wink, wink, of what it would look like if I really put myself first inside my business and my family relationships, and where does selfishness and generosity come up inside of that. So that's my personal take on it.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I'm kind of sneaky in that I purposefully leave these topics pretty open to give us some wiggle room as I get more. This is our 8th Taboo Talk. As we get further into the journey, I definitely will be getting more and more specific because we could go a lot of different directions today. So I heard a lot of stuff. So Paul, you mentioned that you've got kind of like this ongoing journey with putting you first. Maya, you referenced the idea of like living the regret of like not living up to your true potential. And then I heard Amy mention something about, kind of like the generosity that you give to yourself. I want to kind of start at the beginning, if we could, let's start chronologically at the beginning. At what point in life do you personally remember having to choose to put you versus something else first, and like being aware of that, and like tell me what that experience was like? Does that question make sense? Amy's the only one not nodding.
Well, what comes up for me is like my first moment of that I can remember of selfishness.
Ah.
Right, where I was told to do something that I didn't want to do, and then how I reacted to that.
Do you want to?
So that's what. Yeah, I was at my cousin's house. My parents told me it's time to leave. I said no because I was having fun, and I refused. So they actually zipped me up inside my coat, carried me like a football out to the car, put me in the car. This is before.
This is so your family. Like I could totally like this is not surprising.
And we get home and we pull into the driveway, and I'm still in the back seat, all zipped up into my coat. And my dad's like, "All right, let's go in the house. Time for bed." And I said no. So they let me sleep in the car all night. So, yeah, it was the 70s. You were allowed to do that to your kids, right? So, they locked me in the car. It was all fine. We live in the suburbs. No, it's fine. So when you said that, like, what's your first memory of putting yourself first? So for me, what came up was selfishness and confrontation.
Interesting. So did that come up for both of you guys as well, or did you guys go different? Where did you each go with that?
Confrontation.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was it like for you, Paul? What's your earliest memory of putting yourself first?
I don't know if it's the earliest, but it's maybe the biggest. Where I'm also an entrepreneur, and with any startup, you have to give a lot of yourself. It becomes a problem when you feel like other people expect that from you 24/7, and you don't really have a voice to ask for what you need. And so for me, it was a few years into really getting my startup going. It was successful. And I just felt like I got into this pattern with a partner of mine that was just really, really unhealthy. There was just a lot of demand on me, and probably from my perspective, a lot of demand on him. We were just doing it. We were in it. And I never really stopped to think at first that I need to put my health first as well. And I do that nowadays, but back then it just made me feel angry that, why do you expect so much of me? I need some me time too.
Yeah.
I can't just, develop 24/7. And so it just led to this kind of ongoing conflict that was probably unnecessary. If we both had the words to talk about it back then, it probably would have gone a lot smoother. We do communicate better now, and we have a better rhythm now, but back then it was like a constant war. So that was a tough time of confrontation.
So for you, it sounds like it was a lot about boundaries and like knowing what your boundaries were for yourself.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Just being able to know that I could have boundaries and everything else could still go well, or even better if I were able to communicate those clearly and politely, and just find that rhythm.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys will see me go back and forth. I'm gonna take notes as we talk. I just made a note because I want to talk about language and how closely language is associated with putting me first. But first, Maya, you were nodding your head quite a bit at several points. I feel like I'm gonna give you a chance there.
Thank you. Well, the thing is, I relate to what everybody is saying so far, but the first memory that came to my mind was just several years ago, about 6 years ago, when a bunch of things in my life fell apart. And I got fired from my waitressing job. I had a really bad boyfriend. I had to change the locks because he was aggressive and wouldn't move out. I declared bankruptcy, things fell apart. And I started to do some personal development work, and I was taking all of these really high-end personal development and leadership workshops. And they went really quickly from helping you sort of develop yourself and like, okay, good, we're done, 1, 2, 3. Now you're going to serve. And I remember feeling like this jolt, like this shock, like, well, we just did this short period of me, putting me first, and now I'm expected to serve. And I actually had this kind of health breakdown and had to drop out of the program. And as the years have gone by and I've run into other people, and in fact, some private coaching clients of mine who are currently now going through the program, and they're hitting this place where it's like what Amy was talking about. Am I being selfish or generous? It's like, am I being of service or self-serving? You know, women, I think especially, maybe Paul can speak to this being different, but women are really taught to serve other people. But I looked at my own crisis and not being able to continue with that program of service. And I've seen it with my clients and other people who've gone through, women specifically, that it was like there wasn't enough emphasis on me first and taking care of me first. And I wasn't able to serve. And they're not able to serve until we're fueled first. And so that was the first memory that came to mind when you asked the question.
It points to the fact that I think a lot of times I'll speak for myself. I know that it's easy for me to interpret the notion of me first as meaning it's like an either or. So if I put me first, it's exclusive of everything else, versus the notion of putting me first and a very close second can be my business or my partner or a relationship, right? It's like the idea of once you put me first, it's almost like balance kind of starts to go out the window. So my first, I didn't have this question written down. It just came to me when we started the Blabs. I didn't have an answer prepared. And as I was thinking, as you guys were talking and processing, I think my first memory of putting me first is actually in childhood, similar to Amy. So I have a brother, and you guys should know my parents and my brother, like my whole family is watching us, and you might see them pop up in the chat. So I always like warn my mom, don't freak out, because I say stuff. I'm an adult now, but the kid version of me didn't have the same level of awareness as the adult version of me. So the adult version of me totally doesn't feel this way, Mom. But the kid version of me, I remember being about 2.5. My brother's about 2 years younger than me, and I remember I have like a distinct memory. I can tell you what I was wearing. I remember him getting the attention and being really cute, and me being like, "Wait a minute, what about me? I don't want to play baby games. Like I want to play toddler games," and being like, "No, me first. It's my wait, it's my turn." Right. And for me, it wasn't so much about confrontation as it was about feeling selfish. And I don't think as a toddler, I knew I was being selfish. I think it was more about like wanting equal airtime and wanting love. But now the adult version of me sees it that way. And if I think about it more like in adult terms, I'm all about taking care of the people around me, and taking my own advice of taking care of me first is usually where I'm the weakest. Which I think is probably a pretty common human condition, right?
Yeah, and as a kid, I think about when you talk about children and being a child and the child version of yourself, that's when you don't have the words. You don't have the experience. You don't have the coping mechanisms. You just have pure need. You have pure, you're pure. You want what you need, and you want people to kind of automatically know that and take care of you. And then those are those things that get stuck with us, right? And then we have to become an adult and get over it somehow, get beyond it.
Well, I think it's interesting for us to talk about, where does this notion of selfishness come from? Right? Like that's so ingrained in our culture that doing anything for yourself is selfish. So where does that come from for all of you?
Well, and it's so interesting because it's so backwards. Like, I'm a firm believer that if we all took care of self first, Maya just is like, I'm going to the dark. If we all took care of self first, that we would all be happier, wholer, and completer, I just made up some words, human beings, which then means we would interact with society in a much healthier way. Like, in theory, if we all did that, we would have a really beautiful world to live in. And yet we all, like, I think a lot of us know that intuitively, and we still don't do it. And I don't know, is it like, do you think it's a human condition that has us associate prioritizing ourselves with selfishness? Is it something that we are conditioned to by society?
I don't know. I think that's a really interesting question to explore. I think that me being, 43 years old, not having children of my own, there are a lot of, like, when I went to Thailand last year, kind of on a whim, right? Like, I bought my ticket and left the country within like 3 days, right? And one of my married friends who doesn't own her own business, so she's a 9-to-5er who has 3 kids, was like, oh, her response was, well, it's kind of nice that you can go off on a whim, on a moment's notice, and fly around the world, right? Denoting that there's something wrong with me that I was able to do that for myself. So I think there is this thread inside the fabric of our culture that looks at those kind of things, like pampering yourself, going to a spa day, as like not good.
And so a question though, so when she said that, did you feel bad about spoiling yourself, or did you feel like she was like, did she say that?
Well, here's an interesting thing. Like that Thailand trip for me, that wasn't like for me, it didn't occur as a splurge or something I was pampering myself with. It occurred as something I earned.
Gotcha.
Right? Like I decided I wanted to go to Thailand. It was X amount of dollars. I went out and made X amount of dollars so I could go on that trip. Right? So for me, it wasn't a splurge. It wasn't a gift to myself. It wasn't even really putting myself first. It was something I went out and earned with my like brain power and sweats, right? So when she came back and said that to me, like it didn't occur to me that other people would view that as selfish.
But Amy, I think it's pointing to what you're talking about and that thread of our social fabric. It's like, I don't know if it's our puritanical roots. I'm sure this is not across the board in every culture, but we have these indoctrinations in our culture. And the stories that you were all telling from your childhood, I have stories like that too. I at one point wanted to go swimming at the lake with my mom and my siblings. And I don't know, was I 6, 5, something like that? I must have done something wrong. They put me in the living room and said, you don't get to go. And I became hysterical. And I remember trying to crawl out the window and like my dad dragging me back in by my feet, but I was going to go to the lake. And I think that instead of like, we're taught that that's bad, but that's not bad. That's like brilliant advocacy for ourselves and our desires. And I'm with Sunny. I think this world would be a much better place if we all listened to our desires. And that's not like our ego gratifications. I'm not talking about ego gratification. And I think that our whole social structure and all those cultural mores and beliefs are built on this idea that we are lower than God, that we're egotistical, that if we're not kept in check, like if babies are held all the time, they'll become spoiled. That's crazy. When babies are held all the time, they become safe and secure and not insecure and worried about survival. And they're able to actually listen to their soul calling and uncover their God-given gifts and pursue that in this life. And imagine the world we'd live in if we could all do that without apology. So when your friend says something like that, and I get comments like that occasionally too, although I've mainly cleaned my world up of people who think and say like that. But like, that's also, I look at myself as a life coach. I had a client last night who was saying, well, I believe that, living abroad is possible. And anything's possible. I just don't believe that it's possible for me. And so I think looking at your friend, she might have been accusing you, but really she's reflecting on like, she has this desire and she stops herself before going for it because she has a baby or whatever her reason is. And so wants to lash out because it feels unfair because she has this desire that she's not allowing herself to follow.
And that's exactly what Sarah in the comments might be pointing to. She asked, did she say it was selfish or that she was envious? And I think often, and I don't know how this is for dudes, right? I'm sure there is a dude version of this, but oftentimes when I think there's this culture inside women communities that when somebody has something that's a little bit juicier than you are, the weapons come out. And selfishness, I think, is a weapon that women use against other women.
Yeah. What do you think, Paula? Can you represent all?
Yes.
All men. You're
Yeah.
all men right now, Paul.
Gotcha. Well, what I was going to say is, and can you hear me? Because I think I'm having some internet issues. But
You're okay. You're
Yeah,
a little
stop
broken
me.
up. We can hear you.
Okay. What I was going to say actually was, I kind of came from a different perspective, not because I'm a dude, but because of my mom, who she really represented that person in my life that gave too much, and was, I mean, even today, I talked to her yesterday, and she was saying, "Oh, I have to go take care of this person and go take care of this person, and I don't have any time for me." And I'm constantly encouraging her. Specifically yesterday, I told her, I'm like, go hang out with your friends, take a day off, go, find something you like to do. And so I was always a witness to her putting everyone else first and really never giving herself anything, and how much that has just really been damaging to her. She's always feeling like the one that doesn't have, or that isn't cared for, or doesn't have time for herself. And I think I probably took that and internalized that in a way that made me feel, now I feel good when I take some time for myself. I'll take a spa day. I love the spa. I love getting a massage. I see that as very healing and nourishing to me. And as much as I can, I do try to encourage other people to do things that take care of themselves. I see where my mom is at now, and I encourage her and talk to her. And, she's always, when she gets off the phone, she's like, "I'm so glad I called you." I kind of give her permission to take care of herself. And it lasts all of a day, and then I can
Paul,
talk to her.
Sarah has a great question for you.
Yeah.
It's a tough question, but it's a valid one. Do you think that it's because your mom doesn't recognize the need for self-care for herself, or do you think that she's enjoying that martyr role of being the one to take care of everybody and putting them first and getting to kind of be in that space of not getting for herself?
It's weird when you say enjoy, because while I don't
Sarah's
think
like, I didn't mean that in a rude way. I'm sure your mom is lovely.
Oh yeah. Well, I think there's an addiction quality to it, right? Because you get locked into the role that you're used to, and going outside of that is familiar. And her role with my dad is the one that if you look at her language, she'll say something like, "Well, what was it she said? I'm trying to remember a specific thing from yesterday. She said, "Oh, I actually just asked her to, does she have a counselor that she can talk to about this certain thing that she was going through?" And she said, "Oh, your father wouldn't like it if I, was doing that." And I said, who gives a crap? Like, what do you care? Go talk to someone. It helps to talk to someone. And so just this language of, I can't even do that because someone else just wouldn't like that I do that. Anyways, I lost the plot a little bit of the question, but
I think you started pointing, though, to the difference in generations, too, and how we take care of each other first, take care of ourselves first, right, generationally.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, like my mom's a baby boomer as well. My parents are actually really good. My dad's pretty awesome about supporting my mom and that stuff. But I hear in her friends that notion of, especially from women, but both ways. The guy has to be the provider and take care of the family, and the woman has to stay at home. And now that people are retiring, the baby boomers are retiring, it's leaving this like weird gap, and they don't necessarily know how to take care of themselves first. They weren't trained on how to honor those boundaries and set that life up for them. So I think that this conversation is especially pertinent for people who are hitting retirement and thinking about how do they now put themselves first, especially if you've lived this whole life at service to other people. Like, when does it get to be your turn again?
Well, I'll add one thing there. Just one more point on that was, and this is kind of funny, from that conversation, she was complaining about something that my dad did, or that he constantly does. And he'll come in from a hard day's work, and she said he'll walk right through the kitchen, go sit in his chair and say, "Honey, can you bring me a drink?" And she's like, "It's not that I mind bringing him a drink. It's just the principle." He walked right past the refrigerator. And I was thinking, my wife's name is Sonia. I was thinking, if I did that. If I came in and walked past our refrigerator and sat down on the couch and was like, "Hey, can you get me a drink?" I mean, I don't even think I would be acknowledged. I mean, I think it would just be, she'd laugh at me, and it would be, I would just be thirsty, and and there's just no reason. Obviously, I could have got a drink. It's no problem, So it's definitely that. But just going back to what you said with the generational thing, I don't even get it. I can't even connect with my dad doing that. It doesn't make any sense,
But I want to say something about that, because there's a couple of places where I'm looking at, sometimes it's generational, but sometimes it's not. And I just want to say I'm seeing everybody going to poor internet signal and audio only. So I'm just going to keep talking, and I guess I'll be told if I'm not. You can hear me. Okay, great. So, I don't know how much you guys go in for astrology, but I have found that it explains a lot. And I know that I'm a Cancer, and Cancers, we just love to take care of people. So I love to get my guy a drink. In fact, I miss that I don't have a guy right now. I'd love to be able to tend to someone. And it's been a little bit of a hard adjustment. I traveled all over the world by myself. I love to get massages and go outside and go take myself out for fancy lattes and write in my journal. I like to practice self-care and spend time by myself and do things that I enjoy. And I noticed that it's a little hard of a shift for me to be single and not be focusing my attention on somebody else. So some of that is not good. It's pathological. It's like, well, good. I'm glad I have a chance to be single and focus on me. That's a good practice. But also there's this natural desire I have to take care of people. And so, it's an interesting thing to consider. Like, how can we be of service or be receptive of service without it being either selfish or martyred, on either side? If you're the recipient, how can you be gracious and accept without being selfish and demanding?
I think the distinction though is how you handle it. So my partner's a Cancer, loves taking care of other people, will never complain about it. When it becomes a complaint, a boundary is drawn and it stops. Right? I think there's a difference between knowing yourself as a caretaker and wanting to take care of others, and then taking care of others and then constantly having that be the thing that you complain about in life.
Right.
And I think that if it's the thing you complain about in life, that's where, in my opinion, you're probably not setting healthy boundaries, and you need to look at how much of this is because you're a nurturer and a caretaker and you're getting out of it as much as you're putting in, versus how much are you doing out of a feeling of guilt and obligation. And you really need to take an assessment of how much, should you reinvest some of that time in yourself and your own joys and pleasures? And I think there's a distinction between the two. There's nothing wrong with being a caretaker, but it goes back to where we started. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You can be a caretaker and a really generous one and still put me first.
And I think there's a huge cultural story that we have to butt up against here, particularly from a woman's perspective. I'm a marketer, right? So I see everything through a marketing lens. And 2014-15 was all, when you look at the big corporate marketing, it was all about bad dads and stupid men, right? It was the dad who doesn't know how to change a diaper. It was the dudes who can't clean up after themselves, right? There's this cultural acceptance of men don't have to pull their weight with housework and women complain and nag, right? So we've built up this whole story as evidence and proof and acceptance of that's how it has to be, right? So when we butt up against things in the media that reinforce again and again and again how relationships ought to go and how you're supposed to conduct yourself, it's why, we have to ask ourselves, why is it a conversation that in our culture that taking a spa day, having a girls' night or a guys' night out is such a bad thing? I think if we can get to the root of why that's so, then I think we can go places. When you start dating someone, it's a big deal if your guy goes out with his guy friends without you, right? For some women, that's a huge deal. They don't want their guy having guy time with their guy friends because who
Can we
knows?
talk about that for a minute? Because that baffles me. Is anyone here personally upset by their partner going out with their same gender friends?
No, I've pushed for it many times. Like, get out of the house, go do something. Yeah.
Because it's a total tangent, but like to me, that's my partner putting me first, putting themselves first, right? And that's what I want. Like, I want to be with somebody that's independent.
I think
Really, I'm weird in that way.
no, I think you are weird in that way because I think the cultural norm is for not that.
I wouldn't disagree with you, Amy, but I think sometimes it goes back to like over the past several years, I've really cleaned up my atmosphere. Like sometimes I'm like, I might need to spend more time in mainstream normal reality. That
My world isn't normal anymore. Yeah,
exactly. I'm like, I don't have that. And I have great friends where if we have a plan and then I say, or they say, listen, it turns out I'm actually exhausted and I need to stay home. There are no hurt feelings. Like I've had friends in the past who I would say that to, like, I'm so sorry, but I have to cancel. I'm just exhausted, need to stay home. They would get petulant about it, right? And I've been with boyfriends like that too. And I also want to say the thing for me, I love my alone time at my house. It's one of my favorite things, just be me by myself in my home. So when I've lived with boyfriends, me kicking them out wasn't even about them. I was pretending that I cared, that they felt good and had a good time, but I really wanted my me time, which was me being home alone without them.
So, okay, I'm curious, like, I feel like this might be the case with quite a few social norms. I think maybe the media is the only thing keeping this social norm alive. Because I also cultivate my world pretty heavily, and I have some awesome friends. And because I'm an entrepreneur in the circles I run in, I have a lot of uncultivated friends as well, if you will. I don't actually know anyone personally who gets upset about their partner wanting to go on a guys or a girls night. I feel like it's one of those like Cosmo myths that's just been perpetuated by the media.
Oh, it is not a myth.
Do you personally know people who get upset?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
well, there went that theory.
Well,
It's definitely not a myth.
I was going to say one of the weirdest things that me and my wife experienced was we have a pretty creative relationship. We try to design our life and we talk about it and we figure things out. And so because we do that, things tend to work, and obviously it's not perfect, but we would go out with our friend. We would go out with our same gender friends. She was telling me one time about this trip, and I have the same experience. And you get around certain people, and like if I'm around my guy friends, and they're just talking about their wife or their significant other, like they're just so glad to be away from them, and oh God, I needed a break so bad from them, or all these kind of negative things. He does this or she does that, and obviously we all have like a something to vent about our spouse or partner, right? But we were just amazed at how prevalent the negativity was, and we talked about it afterwards. We both had the same experience, and we talked about it afterwards. And I'm like, I like hanging out with you. I don't when I get around these people, they're talking, and I don't feel like I have anything to contribute because I'm just like, we just have fun. We just do what we want to do, and it's not a big deal. And I guess because we talk a little bit more than them, I don't know what it is, but I just feel like they're not telling their partner what they really want, and therefore it just sounds like all this resentment is coming out when they're around their friends who they think, yeah, right, man. She doesn't let you do anything, right, man? I'm like, no, I can do pretty much anything I want. It's completely fine. I don't know what you're talking about. Sounds like you guys need to talk a little bit.
Becomes like the vent night, and it
right.
perpetuates like that. I gotcha.
Yeah. So I don't like it, and I do my best to shut it down. Really, I'm like, no, it's not. We have a good time.
Well, I think that kind of thing translates into other arenas too. Like, when you hang out with entrepreneurs, often you'll get into like this bitch session about terrible clients, right? And when you vent to your entrepreneur friends about your client work, it's always the bad stories and how this one client drives you crazy. And, so I think I think part of what that is just a natural tendency to vent frustrations that you're having with a peer group who's supposed to get you, right? And seek like affirmation and confirmation that you're not the crazy one. So I think that's part of it, and I think that's just unique to human nature, not necessarily like a romantic situation.
And we
I
definitely
think
need that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do think that like there is this weird cultural phenomenon where, girls get together to talk about how awful men are, guys get together to talk about how awful women are, and it's kind of nutty.
Well, and I think we can tie it back.
I just gotta say, I am completely opposed to those kinds of conversations because it's like the way the brain is wired is they've done studies that when, the cashier says something a little bit snide to you, you'll tell like 19 people on average. For the rest of the day, you'll tell anybody. But if the cashier says, "Oh, you look so pretty, I love your lipstick," or whatever, you'll tell like 3 people on average. So yes, as human beings, we're wired, and those are not the correct numbers, okay? That's just the general idea of this study that they've done. So yeah, we're wired that way, but I think we now have the choice to choose. And I actually had a friend who I talk to a lot, and we hash out our problems and our stuff like as looking for solutions, not just complaining. But she said, why don't we start with talking about in every conversation? Let's just start on the positive things that have happened.
Oh my God,
actually,
language.
Right? That's what I do with my clients. They want to launch into the bad stuff, and I'm like, I need to hear celebrations and like good news if you have to dredge it up, because we need to fight that wiring. It's like otherwise, we're not elevating ourselves, and it's effort. I'm not
absolutely agree. My big thing is always with my clients, I'm always like, where are you winning? We always start with that. I won't start a call without talking about where you're winning. And just to bring it back to the topic of the day, the whole me first thing. I feel like if you are focusing on yourself first, whether that be spa days and, taking the time you need to have alone time or going out and having a girls' night or a guys' night, then you're going to know yourself well enough to know what's going on and to choose where you have those conversations. And so like, just to kind of give, sometimes sharing what works for you helps other people figure out what works for them, right? So what works for me, my partner and I have an agreement that we don't talk about anything outside of our relationship that we haven't already talked about together, right? So I know that nobody knows a problem about my relationship that I don't know, because that doesn't work for me. That doesn't work for us. Right.
That's a great point. Yep.
And there's also an agreement that I don't talk about problems in my relationship, but with 2 people, and my partner knows who those 2 people are. So it creates like a safety there, but that comes from both of us knowing ourselves and putting ourselves first and knowing what our boundaries are. If we didn't both clearly know what was okay for us, we couldn't then come together as whole individuals to create something that works. Right. And I think that to do that, to figure out who I am and what my boundaries are, requires a bit of what society might call selfishness. And I think when we say me first, I love Taboo Talk because I get to dig into these topics for the week leading up to like be prepared to host you guys. And so the conversations I've been having with my friends in my world about the subject, everyone immediately went to selfishness. And everyone immediately went to things like, what's your self-care practice? Almost everyone went to spa days, pedicures, going to the gym, taking an extra long shower. Like it was all like physically related splurge things. And I was surprised because I have pretty self-aware friends, but I was surprised a lot of people didn't go to meditation or a spiritual practice or journaling or, do you know what I'm saying? So like, what do you guys specifically do to put yourself first? And I mean like at a soul level. I don't want to hear about your pedicures and stuff. Like, what do you do on a soul level?
I think this is a huge problem that you're pointing to in this whole self-care movement, that they have it collapsed with luxury. Like self-care and luxury is not the same thing. Parts of self-care might look like a massage, right? But I think we create this standard where people could, not saying that they do, but could infer, oh, I can't afford to take care of myself. Because there's this whole thing like, self-care involves pedicures and manicures and getting your hair done by $300 stylists, right? And so I think that's excellent, like to bring in, what is it that we do to take care of ourselves? Like here's something that I've noticed. And this is really common with people who work from home, stay-at-home moms, right? I read something on Facebook where a school, and I don't know if it was true or like an internet jokey thing, where a school sent out a letter saying that moms were no longer allowed to drop their kids off in pajamas. Right, and I thought about that for a second. And like I work from home, right? So my commute is about 10 feet. And there are days like I'll get into emails, or I'll be on social media, and it'll be 3 p.m. and I'll be like, oh, I'm still in my jammies, like I took my shower for the day at like 5 o'clock tonight, because I was just involved in other things throughout my day. So that had me thinking, like getting dressed, putting on shoes, putting on lipstick as we did before we got on here, that's all self-care. Right? Like making yourself look good, feel good, smell good is all things that you do for yourself to reward your own body for being in this existence and treating you well.
See, for me, it's not. For me, it's self-maintenance. It's self-preservation. Putting on lipstick, I do because I know it makes my lips look better so you guys can see me
So
talk.
where's the difference between self-maintenance and then self-care for you? How is that different?
I think that everybody has to self-define. And I think one of the first steps is self-defining. So for me, my self-care comes a lot more from meditation, spend time in nature, and I'm extremely extroverted by the true definition of the word. I fill up when I am with other people. And Taboo Talk is part of my fill up right now because I'm dealing with some health issues. I can't drive. I don't get to go out as much. This is part of my social regime. And you guys fill my coffers. Literally, this is self-care for me. But that doesn't work for everybody. For some women, putting on lipstick and putting on clothes, that is self-care. But I don't think it's the same for everybody.
For me, it tends to be.
I agree. I hate getting.
I love it when that happens.
Yeah.
No, I'll just say quickly, I hate pedicures and manicures. I like having my nails done and my hair done because I like how I feel when I look good and well tended, but I hate the experience of it. So those are not luxuries for me. And I like alone time. Yeah. Wait, but Paul, go ahead. Sorry, I just wanted to say that on the quick heels of what she said.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I think we all have like a wide range of things we do, everything from internal to external. And to your question about, how do you take care of your soul? I have a handful of things I do. It's really important to me to be by myself, to meditate. But where I find that I get the most reflection and where I find myself is through travel, because there's something about, and specifically travel by yourself, and even more specifically, road trips. I've always loved road trips by myself. I can drive about 12 hours before I get exhausted, and I can do the whole thing without any music playing, any audiobook playing. And by the end of it, I feel like I figured out all the stupid little annoying questions that bugged me the last 3 months where I haven't been able to have time to myself. So I do the meditation, I do yoga, all the things that, practice awareness, but really somehow for me, road trips do it. Just getting out, seeing the countryside, or traveling to a place where I haven't been part of a certain culture before. So I think that forces you to look at yourself and see how you're different from this culture or these people. And sometimes it can be scary. Sometimes it's amazing. But those are the times that kind of force me to look back in. And that's very nourishing to me.
I really love that you know that about yourself and that you shared it in this arena, because that's a really specific kind of wonky way to connect with yourself. But I think it's really awesome because I don't know that people would necessarily think of going on a road trip alone as self-care. And
Well,
it totally is if you let it be. So I love that you know that about yourself and that you shared that.
I think it used to be a way, when I got my first car, it was a way to just escape. It's funny, we were looking at old emails, me and my wife. We were looking at old emails, and she showed me one where one of the first emails I ever sent her was like, "Hey, I like to travel by myself. I need my space." And she just thought it was so funny because she's such an avid traveler too. Like I met her while she was on the road touring as a musician. So I wasn't telling her anything new. But now she sees me go on trips by myself and come back. And she's like, "You always come back with things figured out a little bit better." Or, I kind of interpret it as all the things I've been trying to kind of, teach you or tell you, like you figured it out. But no, she's not like that. But it's true.
It's
like,
probably this little undertone. It's good that you catch that.
your brain works it all out though. Like you give it some space and it works it all out.
I so relate to everything you just said, Paul. I took my first real road trip in the fall, and I did not want to come home. And then in December, I love to travel too, and I prefer generally to travel alone, so I can just have the experience of me in the place. And I just got this real desire, like crazy strong desire. I wanted to go to Mexico, and it seemed far-fetched. Fortunately, I have a coach and a surrounding group of supportive friends who are like, go to Mexico. Because I was coming up with all those reasons like why it was not a good idea and why it didn't make sense. So I spent a whole month in Mexico, and it healed me body, mind, and soul. I had a lot of heartbreak a few years ago that I still hadn't completely healed. I launched a new blog. I started writing more. I put together all the material for my new website, and I came back, and this is a point that I had wanted to make a minute ago after Amy made that comment about sort of like when we get together with our friends and we kind of like complain about stuff. I think sometimes the root of those complaints and that habit, like that habitual complaining, is because we live in this society where we all have those experiences like when we were kids and we didn't get to stay and play with our cousins or do the thing that in our culture we take for granted, like that's not reasonable. Sometimes play has to end. You can't just stay and play with your cousin as long as you want to. But there are cultures where you never get pulled away from your cousin because you're all living together and life is a little bit more seamless. There's this great book called The Continuum Concept where I think she was like I don't remember if she was an anthropologist or what, but she in the 70s went and lived with an Amazonian tribe for a long time and spent a good amount of time with them. And she said she never saw the kids cry. Like there was never a sense of you have to be pulled away from your play or you have to be pulled away from your mom. And we have all of these artificial separations in our culture now. And I'm wondering if it just means that we're never fully nourished so that even as adults, like Paul was saying, like we're still yearning. And then it's like, do we have to get over this or get beyond it? Of course, in my work, I actually believe, no, we need to fully nourish ourselves. And I can use myself as an example. That month in Mexico, I really thought I'm going to have to move to Mexico. That's it. And I was ready to do it, right? But after a month there of just riding a bike around, eating what I wanted to, doing everything the way I wanted to, my body felt better, my soul felt lighter, my heart felt healed, and my creativity was really flowing. And I have just been happier and less oriented toward complaining because I'm finally fulfilled on a really deep level.
That's awesome. That's really awesome.
Great.
You mentioned a book. One of the things I do with Taboo Talk is I put together a resource page. So after every episode, there's a resource page that goes live that references any TED Talks, links, articles, books, all that kind of stuff that we might have referenced. Do you guys have any go-to resources that you currently use to kind of keep yourself informed and filled and continue to expand your world? Or is there maybe like a book or a movie that you saw that kind of like shifted something for you that you could share with us?
When you were talking, I was thinking about the most recent book that I read that was just really super powerful. And I didn't expect it. It was just in my library, my audiobook library.
Love
audiobook. My wife a little too much. She's a counselor. She's a professor of counseling. So one of her counseling books was by Daniel Siegel, and it's called The Neurobiology of We. And it's just, man, it sounds so boring at first, but it's so good because it really gets into the actual neurobiology of
WE.
we, right, yeah. But how they're figuring out, scientists are figuring out exactly how meditation changes the brain structure, mindfulness meditation, awareness, and he just kind of really digs into that for hours and hours. And I think the audiobook itself is really good because he has such a good voice, and I've actually seen him live now. I liked it so much, I went to a counseling conference. I'm not a counselor, but I liked it so much, I went to see this guy live.
Wow.
So it's really, really good stuff, and I think it's, if you're, I think for me, I tend to really like to understand, if I'm going to do meditation, I can do it, but if I understand that it's actually changing the structure of my brain, I'm so much more invested. So it gets into
I love
that.
when people merge the science and the spiritual woo-woo stuff. Like that to me is really beautiful.
And he merges all of that really well and really well spoken in the audiobook.
Yay. I've added that to our resource page. Anyone else have anything?
I want to share a tool that really kind of revolutionized my life, and actually like 3.5 years ago, and that was sort of the same philosophy that I followed that got me to Mexico most recently, which is I'm gonna say the sort of mantra that was what I was trying to live with, that got me moving out of New York City to upstate New York, which is where I love to be, and that got me going into business for myself and got me to Mexico just a month ago. It's I trust my desires to lead me to my best life. And it's this idea that it's this idea that when we take care of our survival needs and start to feed our soul, that we can begin to trust that the desires that arise aren't going to be needy, ego, graspy things, but a true calling by our soul into our best life.
Trusting that it's your intuition.
I trust my desires.
I trust my desires to lead me to my best life. And the thing about soul desires, your true desires are crazy. They're like, I'm going to Thailand. Like, that's a soul desire. And I actually think, and I know that Sarah mentioned it in the comments, was she, just envious? When we're not desires and doing what we're called to do next, we keep getting stopped and stopped and stopped. And like that constant squelching leads to resentment. So we direct that resentment at the people around us, or we punish ourselves with food, or, we misuse ourselves because we're angry and we can't figure out why. And people see it in us sometimes. Yeah.
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 I love that.
Oh,
Amy, that revolutionized my life.
So one of the things that I think part of the conversation around self-care and nourishing yourself and putting yourself first is this notion that I don't have any time, right? Or I don't have enough time to take care of myself. So I did this for myself, and maybe I should do it again. I did this maybe 1.5 years ago, but I did a time audit. I used a freelancer's tool called Toggl, Toggl, that allows you to, with one click, track your time. And it's designed, for you to track billable hours on a project. But anytime I started something and stopped something, I would track it in Toggl for about 7 days. So if I was playing on Facebook, if I was going to the bathroom, if I was cooking, I literally tracked pretty much, as much as I could remember, all my time for 7 days. And it is exceptionally illuminating about how you actually spend your time. So I think that if I don't have enough time as part of your conversation of why you can't put yourself first, doing a time audit is an exceptionally interesting tool.
I love that. That's brilliant. Yeah. No, I love that. I'm trying to think what I would say from my perspective. I think the biggest, from a resourcer, should think about my questions before, like how I'm going to answer them before I ask them.
Now you're trapped.
Where's the fun in that?
Well, I mean, I've said this a few times on Taboo Talk, so I feel like I always come back to it. But The Celestine Prophecy is a really awesome book that just kind of stirs a whole bunch of different. It's pretty woo woo, but it gets into a lot of different areas and really can jumpstart someone's journey into wanting to become more self-aware and prioritizing themselves, because it really gets into how energy flows throughout the universe. And how you not being balanced and taking care of yourself first can then have that butterfly effect where the whole universe is out of whack. One of the soapboxes I can get on in my business is how if entrepreneurs don't invoice for their services, it creates an imbalance. Even if the invoice balance is out to zero, showing the value of those services is important. It puts something out into the universe that allows balance. Mm-hmm. And I think that if we take it out of the entrepreneurial context and look at it in our lives, we do things for people all of the time without thinking about the energetic or the social imbalance that gets created when you don't let people give back to you. So I think that we're so focused on taking care of others first. In order for me to put me first, that means I have to be willing to receive. And we are not hardwired, I don't think, to receive. And we certainly aren't conditioned by society that it's okay to receive. So like right now, I can't drive. I have vertigo so bad that it's unsafe for me to drive, which means that I have to ask and be willing to receive rides from the people around me to my doctor's appointments, to get groceries, to be social. Luckily, I live in a really awesome neighborhood. There's lots of restaurants. People drive by my house all the time because I live on a busy road, but it still takes something for me to ask. And for me, a lot of my comfort with that, I was like, make a little visual here. If this is like the surface and I was kind of here in my comfort level, when I read the Celestine Prophecy, my comfort level at receiving was really deepened because I got to see, I'm a big picture thinker, I'm a strategic thinker. So I really got to see the impact on a big picture scale of my community, how I'm impacting my community by not receiving. If all I'm doing is giving and I never receive back, it's making an imbalance teeter-totter somewhere out there. And that's not okay with me. So I would recommend that as a resource. And then I also recommend establishing rituals for yourself that serve you. So for me, every Sunday, I take a few hours. That's me time. Sometimes I go to the beach. Sometimes I go sit by water and meditate. Sometimes I binge watch Netflix. But that's my ritual, is that I take the time to actually make a choice of how I'm going to spend this time on a Sunday. 99% of the time, I spend it saging my house, meditating, and really thinking about how the upcoming week's going to go, because I'm pretty woo-woo. But that ritual of like taking the time to decide how I want to invest this time has been really, it's been really good for me and helped me really look at how I put myself first and kind of eliminate the selfish aspect.
And also I want to say to that, Sunny, that like, I can only imagine that you show up like as a better person in the rest of your life and to other people after doing that, right? I mean, it's like, I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting, actually. I think of my dad. He wouldn't take care of himself, and then he'd get really grumpy, and we'd be like, he was an artist. We'd be like, go to the studio. But he felt like he had to do other things with the family, but he was totally unpleasant to be around. And I know that that can be true of me. Even I'm single. I live alone right now. If I'm not taking good care of myself, I'm grumpy, and that's not pleasant for me as an internal experience, you know? So I can imagine that you insisting that you take that time is having you just show up better.
It's huge. And it's interesting too, because like my partner knows I was being pretty grumpy a couple weeks ago, and I was taken to the park for a nap. I love it. Because he knows that I obviously hadn't been doing my Sunday ritual. I needed some time with nature. So I was kidnapped and taken to the park with a blanket and said, lay down, take a nap in the sun, and then I'll take you home. So, you know, it absolutely, and you know, what's funny when you said that, Maya, about your dad, it totally had me go like, ooh, my dad just retired, about a year and a half ago. And I love you, Dad. You're probably watching this. He was kind of an asshole for a long time because he hated his job. He hated his job. He spent 35 years putting food on the family table and empowering my mom to homeschool us. And in the meantime, he hated his job. And since he's retired about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, he's a completely different human being because now he's investing the majority of his time in taking care of himself and his own needs. And, you know, like I very much appreciate what he did for the family and what he enabled my mom to do and how he took care of us. Like I mad respect for that. And I'm so glad that he's taking care of himself now. And I'm very curious as to what life would have been like if he had endeavored to take care of himself a little bit and find balance when I was a kid. Because he was so invested in taking care of everyone else. Yeah, he wasn't a very, like, my dad wasn't a cuddly dad because he didn't have space to be, right? And so it's crazy how that can impact the people around you.
No, and I think also, it points back to how we think we're taking care of ourselves. Like, are you guys familiar with the 5 love languages?
Yes, love them.
Right?
Super helpful.
So for a while, for my whole life, I didn't feel like my dad loved me until I read about the 5 love languages and I heard about acts of service. That man was all about acts of service. And, what you're describing about your dad, working at a job that he didn't love to support the family, and your vision or your mom's vision of homeschooling the kids, that's an act of giving, and ultimately is like giving back to himself, right? So we have all of these ways. It's almost like, we're talking a lot about social structure and indoctrination and what's culturally permissible. It's almost like it's only permissible to feel loved if somebody else gives us love, or to feel like we can give back to ourselves if we do it through taking care of our wife and children. And it's sort of convoluted. And I know, I had an experience with a client a while ago who was struggling with her. She was visiting her elderly mom who was just like being sort of her usual awful self of like, why are you an artist? Why don't you have a better job? You don't have health insurance. Aren't you worried about the future? You're telling me your boyfriend isn't working. Like this whole, are you losing weight or are you not going to lose weight? Like this whole thing. And she just emailed me in the middle of this weekend and was like, okay, I want to stay and help my mom, but I'm losing my mind. I just want her to accept me. And I want her to accept my lifestyle choices and just stop being like beating me up and insulting me, which she's done my whole life. This is a woman in her 40s. Her mom was in her 80s. And I said, are you willing to play a little bit of a game? And she said, yeah, I'll do anything. I said, okay, she was saying she wanted acceptance. I said, I want you to just practice giving that to your mother. Like you're just going to go back out there and you are going to gift her what you want from her. You're going to gift her acceptance. And she told me that it was like just a few minutes of her just like opening, like, Sunny, you talked about the energetic connections. She just like opened herself. She didn't say, okay, Mom, I'm going to just accept you now. No, she just energetically and emotionally opened. She said a crazy thing happened, that for 15 minutes, her mother suddenly stopped what she had been doing for the past 40 odd years and looked at my client and said, you're so beautiful. I hope you get how beautiful you are. And she just launched for about 15 minutes into a completely opposite style conversation. And my sense of it was that because her mother felt accepted, she was then able to offer the acceptance back. And I think that's one beautiful example of gifting somebody what we want, but we can also gift it to ourselves. Like I'm single now, right? So in the past, habitually, I would have walked around feeling really lonely and sorry for myself. I was like a big time victim. And then I'd be with a guy who he could never give me enough love or compliments for me to possibly ever feel full. Now that I'm starting to gift myself sort of just the pleasure and like that me first self-care of accepting myself, I accept other people more easily. Other people accept me more easily. I think just what you said earlier, I'm not going to say I understand how it works, but there is some sort of energetic or emotional cycle or back and forth that we're in silent communication with each other about all the time.
Yeah, totally.
And I'll add the, sorry.
No, go ahead, Paul.
Just when we're flooded and it's our amphibian brain taken over, and you're unable to really connect with that peaceful part of yourself. Something that I have experimented with after reading that Neurobiology of We book, actually, is just you only really can sustain that for about 15, 20 minutes if you're properly distracted or away from the stimulus. So what I've tried, if I'm in an argument or whatever, just take a few minutes to myself, even though it's tough sometimes just to leave the situation. If you put some habits in place, like right now, my habits are take a few minutes to myself until I know that that flooded feeling has left me. And then there's two things that are really hard for any of us to do. One is to choose to. I just lost my train of thought. What was I going to say? Well, anyway, so an example is the last time this happened, I took a few minutes to myself, and then I said, well, what is the option I can choose here that opens my heart instead of the one that closes it down? And if you pay attention to that, you can tell which way to go. And it's tough. It's the tough decision to go, you know what, I feel kind of like I was right. I should be, I'm right. And so, but if you go back to the person and you say, you know what, I want to hear more about what you had to say. You're the one that's giving. You're giving without the expectation of receiving. And it's really hard to do. I struggle with it immensely. But whenever I get a little grip on that and practice that, it's amazing how much you get instead of trying to struggle against, I'm right. Why won't you see me as right? Can't you just admit that I'm right? Instead, if you give without wanting to receive, puts you in a really calm, grounded space, because then you don't need anything anymore. If that's your perspective, I don't need anything. I can take care of you. It's the option that opens my heart. It's just amazing what happens.
I love everything you're saying, Paul.
I never believe it's going to work. Every time I just think, this isn't going to work. And then it works. It's awesome.
I have a friend who constantly says this, and it's one of my favorite quotes.
Did my computer freeze, or did we lose
Sunny, I lost you. You can be right or you can be total cliffhanger. We need to know. What?
Oh no, I think we lost her. It is a total cliffhanger. So let's come up with our own answers for that. You can be right or you can be, what would you say?
No, wait, that's not it.
Well, I had I think the answer that Sunny was going to provide is you can be right or you can be happy. I had one of those problem children clients who, it didn't matter what I said. It got to a point where I finally sat down. I was like, why are you paying me? Right? You don't take any of the advice I give you and you go ahead and implement your own stuff and then complain to me that it didn't work when it was exactly what I told you not to do. Right? Yep. And I had to restrain myself all the time from playing the see I was right game. And one of my mentors at the time said, well, just approach it like this. You can either be right or you can be happy. So you either do what the client wants you to do or you fight for what you think is right. And I think that you can either be right or you can be happy. It kind of works in a lot of situations. Because we hold on to.
I got cut off.
No,
we were just pulling in what we thought.
I said that, and then my internet went out. That's so funny. I was I'm so glad you brought that up. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think sometimes for particular people like myself, we want to get the last word in and we want to be right. Like I have a huge justice thing that actually, ironically, I just discovered runs through my astrological chart. Yeah, it's very interesting. So I can't be with injustice, right? Particularly when I feel like I've been wronged and I know for a fact I'm in the right. So that's where this whole conversation with my mentor came up, is you can either be right or you can be happy. Choose. Right? And it really was a choice. And I chose I wanted to be happy rather than wanting to be right.
Yeah, and it's like what Paul was saying. It's like sometimes a bitter pill when you're wrestling with yourself. But then I think you're right. The results are so good. I loved what Paul said, because you don't need anything anymore.
It's so much more relaxing.
Yeah.
You can just relax about it. And especially if you're clear, I think it's one of the hardest things for me, I won't say for everyone, one of the hardest things for me is just to be clear about what I even want. I mean, we're talking about entitlement, but I don't even know what I really want half the time. And it takes me a few minutes or days, weeks, months to figure out, oh, that's what was underneath that emotion. And if I can get clear about that, I can ask for it. Or oftentimes, if I get clear about it, I almost don't even need it anymore. I kind of just relax about everything, and I'm like, oh, that's really what was going on. Yeah, I'm good. I guess I'm fine on that. And so now I try to. I think what when you get in that habit, or you get that feeling of that relaxation, that grounded relaxation, you want that more, and you realize the struggle is just getting in the way, trying to prove yourself,
but
not being clear.
Sometimes that road to get to that place is hard.
Oh, it's impossible, and it doesn't end. It's always there. Yeah.
It's funny. I used to work with kids a lot. I used to work a lot. I used to work a lot with kids when I was younger. Now I'm not. That might surprise people who know me now because I'm not particularly fond of small children. But I used to work really closely with 6-year-olds, and I remember distinctly having a situation where there was a kid who was throwing a temper tantrum, and we're in a church environment, and he is just going crazy, like ugly cry, right? And I interrupted and was like, "What do you want?"
Yeah.
He didn't know. He didn't know it. He totally took a deep breath, and the question totally took him off his A game because he was like, I don't know. So and having somebody ask him like totally took him out, and he took a deep breath and he wiped all the snot off, and he was like, I want a color and I can't find a crayon. Oh, here's a crayon, done. Right? But like he was so in the space of like, I don't have something. Something's wrong. Something's missing. I need something, that he didn't even take a chance to breathe. And I feel like we do that a lot as adults. We'll get into a conversation. I feel like a lot of that's happening in politics right now. People get into a conversation and get so stuck on wanting some outcome that they lose track of what it is they even want. And I feel like that ties back really heavily to putting yourself first.
Well, I think
knowing what you want.
I think so. This is a supposition, right? So I think that there's so much focus on thinking about what you don't want rather than what you do want. Like I took some woo-woo, women empowerment, like workshop thing. And the exercise was to write down 100 things you want in your potential partner, right? That you want in a partner. And as women were reading off the list, there were so many do not wants on that list, right? Like, it's like, I don't want somebody who is into sports, right? Or I don't want somebody who, I don't know, beats his children, whatever it was. Like there was, like people had entire lists of do not wants. And it was a real struggle to come up with things that you do want versus what you don't want. So I think this ties into the whole self-care conversation and the selfishness and like putting yourself first. Like if we're inside a culture that says it's selfish and bad for you to take care of yourself and to to spoil yourself, then by connection, it's also bad to want things.
Can I add something there? Because what that reminded me of is like the very last thing that just a week ago, I went to a road trip to North Carolina from Chicago, and I went to this. This is a good resource too if you want to add it. I don't have a specific book, but it's called Transactional Analysis and Redecision Therapy. Have you heard of this? It was like this group therapy, basically. It was awesome because basically, and the name of the guy is Van Joins. So basically, it's a 3-day retreat kind of thing. And anyways, the gist. I'll just get to the point. A lot of times we have language that just, even if we think we're being clear, like you said, there were so many things on the list that were, I don't want to be a bad speaker or something, or I want to be a better speaker. You don't even realize that that's kind of defeating. So what this weekend was about, they would start by saying, you know, what do you want to change about yourself? And you might say, oh, I want to be a better speaker. And they'd say, well, do you want to be a better speaker, or do you want to be a great speaker? You know, or do you want to be? They were specific. You know, we're not specific when we think we're being clear about what we want, but we're saying things like, oh, I think I want to be better at golf.
We're using like a quantifier from our existing or our past.
Yeah, it's like, do you want to be, just to be really clear about the language you use, because there's so many things that saying you want to be better at there's no, you know, you want to be this much better, that much better, that much better, you know, like, what is it you actually want to be? Maybe it's not even that thing at all. Maybe it's something else that you're trying to get to, and you think being better at this will make you that. And so it was a weekend about like really getting clear about that and where those things came from, and making new decisions and repatterning your brain to think more clear and to see those as very clear goals.
Can you say what it was called again, Paul? Transactional
analysis and redecision therapy.
Oh.
I think it's fantastic, you know, and I think the fact that we need that speaks to the fact that, you know, that story Sunny told about that 6-year-old boy, we're not really focused in our culture on raising our children with emotional intelligence or spiritual intelligence.
We're all on that, baby. We are.
Yeah. Okay. It's all about mental intelligence, right? But that's like one element. And so here we are as adults, and, you know, Paul is saying, I'm not necessarily clear on what I want, which is interesting because I think we are clear. Like, I had a call with a new client yesterday. She said, I've just never known what I wanted. And I said, I actually don't think that's true. Like you just said, and she had listed like 15 things in her ideal vision of her life. So I just sort of recited it back to her, and there's this dead silence on the other end of the phone. She was like, oh, I do know. Like we just don't have that sort of self-reflective process in place. So, I mean, it's beautiful that there are these tools to get us able to clearly, you know, I guess using my language, to hear our desires, what our true desires are, you know?
Because you do know, and you're just not,
you do know.
You're not able to use the right language to get it out.
Or it's impermissible. It's not permissible. It's like, I'm going to Thailand for a month. I love that. Or I'm going to Mexico for a month. Or I'm taking, like, Paul, I keep picturing you say to your wife, like, I'm just going to go for a drive, and like you come back in 12 hours because that's the good length of a drive for you, you know?
Exactly.
So we're gonna do a whole taboo talk on intentional parenting. That's actually coming up really soon. We're going to do a whole taboo talk on creating self-awareness and cultivating self-awareness. In fact, I think for that self-awareness taboo talk, I'm actually going to rotate out guests because I have so many people that want to come talk about it. But to kind of start to bring us back to putting me first, there was a specific thing that I really wanted to hear what you guys take on. So I'm going to talk for a minute, and I want you guys to be prepared to have an opinion when I'm done. So I'm setting you up.
Oh, dear.
And while I do that, for the people who are in the chat, if you guys have a specific question for us, put a /Q in the front, and it'll show up in the white area, and we'll see it. And if you find our conversation interesting, please share us on Twitter so people will come watch us, because I want to talk to as many people as possible because I think this is important stuff. So the thing I want to talk about, I feel like there is a lot of conversation, specifically in the world of millennials, which is a whole nother blab, and it's a whole soapbox that you don't want to get me started on what is a millennial, but we're just going to use the term loosely here. Very, very loosely.
The kids. That's what you're saying.
The kids. Yes, kids these days. There's this whole conversation about them being entitled. They feel entitled to something. There's a sense of entitlement. They don't want to work for something because they're entitled. And I think that there's a very fine line between a sense of entitlement and putting yourself first and being confident. And I'm not sure where that fine line is, but I feel like the word entitlement is getting thrown around a lot in the media, specifically related to kids. but also related to middle-aged folks, because I mean, I feel like I get called entitled sometimes because I feel like I should be able to be a digital nomad and I could be able to work from anywhere. So I feel like the addition of technology, the way kids are growing up these days, the way society is changing, the word entitlement is being thrown around a lot. And I'm not sure when it goes from being, well, it's not that I'm not sure. I'd like to hear y'all's take on when it goes from being a sense of entitlement to just being a confident human being that knows what you want and isn't afraid to go and get it. Do you guys see a distinct difference between the two? Am I the only one that sees this conversation going on? And I will stop talking so you can discuss.
First of all, I want to say Sarah just actually typed something really great into the comments, that entitlement is what you expect from others, and self-confidence and self-preservation is what you expect from yourself.
I heart Sarah. She's an awesome mom.
It's a really great contribution. And I think it's also sort of what we've been touching on about like me, you, what you give to me, what I give to you, is it, and that whole concept. And I just, I feel like I'm maybe making the same point over and over again, but how I have found the most freedom and fulfillment and satisfaction in my own life is really getting clear on what are some of these ego-related wants and needs. And like the word want already has this feeling of lack in it, in some of the original definition, in the original definition of want. It's like you're wanting something, you're left wanting. I don't know how, I can't say it in any other way, but it implies lack. And so when you think of the ego having needs and wants and like being this bottomless pit of needing and wanting, and there's always going to be lack, and you're expecting, like Sarah said, that you'd get something from outside. Whereas if you have a soul desire, like that your true self, that's this liberated self, has a desire to travel or color with a crayon or, make a mess or drive for 12 hours or, whatever it is, it's like those don't harm other people. And they are part of you first, but like not the shell, egotistical shell of you, but like the deep soul part of you that's connected to, in my words, like spirit or God or something greater, not just the human shell of like competition and grasping.
So what do you see happen? But I want to take back to the question. So what do you see happening in the world around you? Do you see a sense of entitlement? Do you see confidence, or do you see something that's I haven't even described and it's really not either of those two things? I put the definition of the two in the chat, by the way, because I did a word study beforehand.
Well, I know I looked up entitlement too. I think, again, first of all, who I'm hanging out with and who I'm around is a whole different context. I might read newspapers or listen to, read blogs and listen to this conversation out there in the world. But I'm not surrounded by people who feel entitled. I'm surrounded by people who, and this, I've been around teenagers recently too, and they're sort of, I think teenagers are naturally, because they're individuating, and so they need to rebel. Like that's just how it's built into the structure of the human development, and we need to give them more room to do that in a constructive way. And I feel like that might also be something that's missing in our culture, a rite of passage, so that kids can actually grow up into adults. So the entitlement conversation I'm aware of a little bit, but I'm not really close to. Who I'm close to are grown women, mainly in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, even 60, who are like, wait a second, this is my life. I'm afraid it's passing me by. I feel like I'm meant for something more. And in fact, this was something I grappled with several years ago. And a therapist told me she thought I was acting very entitled. I had to grapple with that, but I'm like, no, I have a big desire to do big things and express myself and connect to people. And so what I found in my work as a life coach is how can I help people discern like their soul voice from the chaos of all these inherited beliefs and the ego voice? Because once we get connected to those, we're in better service. And it could look from the outside like we're being spoiled or entitled. But I think that if everybody can get connected to, I guess this is just me espousing my belief and my philosophy that if we can get connected to our true soul self, and that might include, a lifelong practice of discovery, then entitlement just sort of, it's not even part of the conversation. Does that make more sense?
I think that if you translate it into woo-woo speak, it's the ego versus the self.
I
The
use
ego
the word
is going to
soul
go with
instead of
entitlement and deserve and what I want to look good versus the self is going to go with what's, I mean, I try to stay out of super woo-woo speak because I know a lot of our viewers aren't real deep into that, but I respectfully actually, I have a different perspective on that, Maya, that I do think that entitlement comes up even in a spiritual practice because I think the ego is constantly trying to take over. And I feel like to me, ego and entitlement are very closely linked.
They absolutely, no, I agree with you completely. But I think if you're committed, it's sort of like what I was saying before. If I'm committed to not complaining, then I have to just not complain. And it might be really hard. And if I'm committed to living according to my soul desires, then my ego might come up and I'm going to be like grappling and wrestling with myself and wrestling demons, but I'm committed not to acting out on it. And I think entitlement is maybe sometimes an emotional state, but it's also an active state of acting like I can. For some reason, I'm getting like the date rape scenario. I'm turned on. She went out with me. I bought her dinner. Therefore, I get to do whatever. Like that to me seems entitlement in the extreme. So I would actually agree with your definitions.
Amy, you're being very quiet.
Yeah, well, so I'm a
That was really funny.
40-year-old.
The child watching, and I just said the child should watch every non-adult taboo talk there ever is. And right at that moment, Maya went into date rape. That was really perfect. We didn't get graphic though. It's all good. Go ahead.
So as a 40-year-old woman in a male-dominated technology space that is rife with 22-year-olds who think they're entitled to the same kind of income and position that I have earned is something that is huge. Like this recent chick who put up a Medium story about the awful treatment she was getting at Yelp, right? I think it was Yelp, and then getting fired the next day. Like what I drew issue with is first that she thinks that it is unreasonable that she has to work in a job for a year before getting promoted. Right? Like, for me, like there is a sense of having to work for or earning something. And not that work has to be arduous or difficult, but like I have accumulated 20 plus years of knowledge, expertise, and skill in a particular area, and that's worth something. Damien, I don't think that income necessarily has to be tied to age. But I'm saying is that there's something off on a 22-year-old feeling that they're entitled to an income that doesn't match with their skill set.
Yeah, there's a difference. So when I was 22, I was making what most 32-year-olds were because I'd been working for 7 years. There's a difference between working your way up and being young and making money and coming out of college
Correct.
and expecting to get paid just because you went to college.
Right.
Difference.
Right. Like my first job out of college was like a total dream job. 1,500 people interviewed for my job. Right. And I got it. And it came with tons of beautiful perks. Like no 23-year-old should have a spending account, right? There just shouldn't be. But regardless.
But you did.
But I did because I earned it, right? Like I put in time and effort to acquire the skills that had me have that position. And that's where I think the sense of entitlement comes when us old folks talk about the young folks, that they haven't actually put in the time to acquire the skill, knowledge, and expertise to be entitled to what they think they're entitled to.
I'm going to interrupt a little bit just to reflect what's going on in the chat.
Yeah.
So there's a specific news story, guys, and Amy, correct me if I'm wrong here, but there was a specific news story of a young girl who tried to sue her employer because she felt like she should basically jump over, you know more about this than I do. She basically felt like she should be getting more money and a bigger title faster right out of college. And she basically said, I shouldn't have to work for it. I should just get it. And she attempted to sue her employer. And so I don't think that what Amy's saying, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Amy, but Damien, I don't think what Amy's saying is that a 22-year-old shouldn't ever make good money or shouldn't ever get a spending account. What I think she's pointing to is that it doesn't come automatically. Just because you go to school doesn't mean you automatically get a great job. Sure, you might be brilliant, and there are certainly 22-year-olds who can land that dream job, and more power to them, but it's not an automatic for everybody.
There's also attitude, right? I think partly what was disturbing in that story about that girl, she just sounded like ungrateful. She really did. She sounded entitled and spoiled and snarky and just not like she was willing to put in any kind of work. And
Amy, can you share the link with me so I can share it in the resources page? It basically, because she was basically getting paid. I wish I could remember the details. She went to start something to a lease she couldn't afford, and then like she made a whole bunch of life decisions based on low pay, and then tried to sue her employer for her low pay. It's basically the way I read the story.
No, she didn't try to sue. So this particular story, her name is Talia. She wrote this open letter to my CEO, who I have it open right now. So let me put it in the chat so you guys can look at it. Basically, she was saying, it's great that you're the CEO and you're making millions of dollars, but here I am, fresh out of college, admittedly with no skills, because she admits that, living in an apartment that's $1,200 a month, and she only gets paid, $700 bi-weekly. Like she deserves more than that, just for the fact that she went to college and has a job. So you can read the article yourself. It caused a big controversy. Well, of course it caused a controversy and a big to-do. And then there were people, 5 years older from her saying, you're freaking nuts. There are baby boomers coming out saying, listen, kid, back in my day. It was a big deal. But what I pulled out of this story from reading her original piece and then all of the subsequent open letters back to Talia was that just by the fact that she got a generic communication degree and had worked for 3 months for a company that's supposed to be hot shit in the technology world, she felt that she deserved, was entitled to a bigger position and more pay than what the job she signed on for was. Like, it's not like they lied to her and said, this is your pay, but then they gave her this.
So
right?
What makes that entitlement for you, Amy?
Let me, you guys just discuss amongst yourself, and let me find in the article the exact piece that had me lose my shit.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that, so, Damien's saying, is that really the norm? And I mean, I mentor kids that are this age group that are 18 to 20, and I can't tell you how many kids I encounter who go to school. I tell them to get internships, get jobs while you're in school. I know it's a lot to manage. We've all done it. It's part of the way society works. They don't do it. They get out of college, and then they wonder why they get passed over for jobs because they have no experience. And then it gets into the whole conversation. Is that really their fault? Are they being conditioned for that? Are we making that can get into this huge social norm conversation about what's appropriate and what's not, what's a fair minimum wage. Like, we could take this in a whole bunch of different directions. But I do think that the fact that somebody who's 22 with a college degree felt it appropriate to go on social media and share with 1 million people her life choices and what she wanted someone else to do about it, I think that it's interesting. Is she very confident? Does she just know what she wants and feel like she deserves it, or is it entitlement?
Well, let me throw a different story out there. I have a friend who's in her 40s who she's been managing a convenience store for years, and she's got a lot of health issues, and she's working overnights, and she's making minimum wage in Florida. I don't know. I don't live in Florida. What is that? It's not really a living wage, is it?
I do. It's like $7.50.
Okay. And so, she's sort of taken to the airwaves on social media talking about we need to raise the minimum wage and really talking about workers' rights and how somebody who works full time should be able to pay for their basic needs. Is that entitlement? Because to me, my experience is that this 22-year-old had a really bad attitude and sounded entitled in my definition. But my friend who has sort of a similar argument, different scenario, feels to me like an activist who's really looking to create balance and fairness.
It's an important decision.
So.
And I want to be careful. I see your question, Matt, and I appreciate you participating, but I want to be careful that we don't take this too far down the path of minimum wage and all of that, because that is its own topic. And we really are, I want to, as the host, I want to make sure I keep us focused, that we are here to talk about me first, self-care, self-love. And we brought up entitlement as it relates to confidence. And where is entitlement, you as a human being putting yourself first and saying, no, this is what I want and what I deserve versus something else. And I don't know the answer to that, Matt. I don't know where a livable minimum wage exists in the US. And I don't know if I'm going to do a taboo talk on that because I don't like to talk about things I don't feel like I can impact. And sometimes politics is one of those topics for me.
And I guess the reason I brought it up wasn't to go with minimum wage. That my point was really just sort of balance those two stories that somewhere were striking me as similar, but felt completely different to me.
Mm-hmm. And Jace, I see your stuff too. Thank you for that. It is a double-edged sword. It totally is. It can be really tricky. And that's why I bring it up, because I feel like sometimes I absolutely act entitled sometimes. We did a taboo talk on race, and I had to repeatedly caveat, I know this is my white privilege. I know this is my entitlement speaking. I still have the question because I want to understand. I don't want to operate from that. So I mean, I know that I act entitled and I act from entitlement and from ego sometimes. And the way I operate in the world, I attempt to lean more towards being aligned and being confident and just knowing what I want. And as a woman in America, I find, especially when I was working in corporate, I frequently had to caveat and soften things that I would say. So I didn't sound arrogant. I didn't sound entitled. I didn't sound like I was being a smarty pants, because it's just not acceptable. So it's really tricky. How do you like stand up for yourself and have confidence and still balance with what's acceptable societally? I don't know that there's a good answer for that. That's why I was like, just wanted to throw it out there and let you guys discuss. Paul, you dropped for a while and you've been pretty quiet.
I'm Comcast, so you know how that goes. Well,
we're entitled to better internet service.
Yeah, well, they have the monopoly here. So I think what I was going to say is I see, and I think that, I don't know the person's name over here, but Amor makes a good point. When you try to talk about something in such a broad stroke, it's difficult to take nuance into consideration. And there's so many people, like I just made really good friends with someone I met in Barcelona over the summer, is now a great friend of mine, and he's a good bit younger than me, but I felt like I had a lot to learn from this guy. He's just so like he'll stop in the middle of the day. We went skiing together, and he just stopped in the middle of the day and was like, I got to do my meditation for 20 minutes. And I was blown away by that. He didn't care what I was doing. It was fine, and it was fine with me. But to me, such of all of these skills come down to how much awareness you have and how much you've been taught to be aware of other people. Because you can be confident and say what you want to anyone. And if you do it with nuance and with awareness of their feelings, you don't come across as entitled. And I don't think it matters how young you are or old you are. I know a lot of people that are my age that are jerks. I know I've been a jerk.
That is a quotable. I know people my age that are jerks.
And I know people half my age that are just sweet and kind and very aware of themselves and aware of other people's feelings and have no problem communicating what they want without treading all over your feelings or trampling over everything in their path. So to me, it just comes down to this is a terrible quote. You're gonna like it though. So I went to see George Carlin live way back when, and and the topic he was talking about at the time in the skit was how everyone thinks their kids are amazing, and he was like, I hate to break it to you, but kids are like everybody else. Couple of winners, whole lot of losers. Well, I think that's a terrible thing to say. I think it just like the point being everyone's kind of the same in that we all have these different levels of awareness and nuance, and it really is an art. I don't think there's no line exactly. It's definitely an art, and you're never getting it all the way right.
Yeah, I love that too. It's definitely you're never getting it all the way right. I'm gonna go write that down. This is Kirk, by the way. I have a tiny house, like a really small house. There's only one place to sit in my house, and I'm occupying the couch. So he came into my house, and I was like, "You should just sit and join us because there's really nowhere else for you to go." But yeah, this is Kirk. He's my partner.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. I
Okay.
just want to give you guys my favorite kid quote. It's by
Yeah.
Utah Phillips, who is a folk artist, a folk singer, right? He did the spoken word project with Ani DeFranco about, I don't know, like 15, maybe 20 years ago. It's beautiful. It's amazing. You should check it out. But he's got this line in here, and he's talking about this kid he meets in the grocery store. And he says, kids are assholes, but they're their own assholes. It's when they grow up and become someone else's asshole that you have to worry. So, like, and I think that ties into this whole, yeah. I think that ties into this whole entitlement, entitlement versus self-care conversation. You know, because we have it that if you're all about you, you come off as an asshole, right? And it appears to other people that you're entitled to things. Like I went off on somebody in the airport once because, you know, I'm entitled to status on an airline, on a particular airline because I've flown so much with them, right? And what was that?
You're such an airline snob. It's great.
I am. And this person who does not tried to cut me off and get in front of me on the line, and that's just like didn't work for me because I'm entitled to that and she is not, right? So I think there's this really interesting line between standing for what you've created in your world and being considered an asshole for it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so it's getting late, and my brain is starting to get foggy, so I'm going to have us wrap up. Let me think of a good note to end on. So we've talked about self-care, we've talked about self-awareness and boundaries, and we talked about entitlement. We need to talk about minimum wage for a little while. What is, if you meet somebody that acknowledges that they don't put themselves first often enough, right? You're having a conversation with somebody and that's what they're telling you. What would be like your go-to piece of advice for them? If they're
I would just say, I mean, I don't know that this is a piece of advice, but I mean, listen, I also have learned who's ready to hear something. I think Paul was saying this, like we're in different places on the path. So some people just aren't even ready to hear it or don't, you know, so, but basically it's really like, I feel like a lot of my work is to give people permission to go for it. Just let them experiment. I actually had what I called a selfish practice for some of my clients at one point because women, in my experience, are so out of practice with putting themselves first and in a positive way, meaning, you know, and so I just feel like I would say, if you're waiting for permission to put yourself first and take care of yourself, I'm giving it to you.
Awesome. Yay. Amy?
So the question is, what do you tell people who aren't putting themselves first?
Yeah. Let's say I come to you and I say, I'm not putting myself first and I don't know what to do about it. And you send.
So I say, oh my God, I know, me too. Sorry, that's what I would say.
Perfect. Paul?
No, but I think, and this is something you and I are playing together with, right? I think for me right now, I'm on this really interesting little adventure. I've quit smoking, right? And I am seeing all the places in my life where the ritual of smoking was like a door stopper for other things, right? I'm an introvert, so when I don't want to be with people, I go and smoke, right? So now I have to figure out, how do I not be with people without the excuse of going to smoke, right? And then it's other things, like I realized that I miss the ritual of lighting something on fire, right? Like I miss it. There's just something very satisfying about using a lighter and burning something. So I'm looking at myself of like, what is it that was being nourished by smoking, and now that that's not there, what can go in that place? So for somebody who is experiencing like a feeling of not being able to take care of themselves, or feeling that undernourished thing, I think the best thing you can do is ask why.
Awesome.
Right? Like, why is it that, like when I made that connection of not wanting to be with people, so I would go and smoke, that was huge for me.
I bet.
Yeah. So I think, and that came up, like I was in Mexico, I think, and I'm like, why am I doing this? Right? I'm the only one who's standing out here smoking. I'm like, oh, it's because I want to be alone. Right. Yeah. So I think that's the first thing to do, is really look at why you're doing or not doing something, and then what else can you put in there that actually feeds you? Because it's obvious smoking doesn't actually feed you, but it was fulfilling a particular role in my life.
Yeah, and you pointed to a lot of stuff, and Maya's kind of pointing out in the chat, like smoking could be self-care. I mean, I love that you're not smoking anymore because it's healthier for your body, but the actual act of smoking was self-care for you at some point. And also the idea of being alone as an indulgence. We feel this pressure as a society to always connect, and sometimes taking time to be alone is the self-care, is the luxury, is the indulgence. So
right.
Yeah.
I think that just the power of asking yourself why. What was that, Maya?
Yeah. I love smoking. I'm not a smoker. My body hates it. But I think just the act of smoking, lighting it, holding it, inhaling it, the whole atmosphere, it's sexy, it's sensual, it's pleasurable. So there's that, right, that it fulfills.
Yeah, there is a whole tactile experience that goes along with it. So, like, I'm using an electronic cigarette now, and I'm finding ways that I'm turning that into a ritual and a very tactile experience. So I think, like, I think there's so much power in asking why. Why is it that you do or you don't do something? Like, and now I'm starting to explore that. Like, why don't I make my bed every day? It makes me exceptionally happy to look at a made bed, right? But why don't I do it? Or why do I do it? Why does it make me happy? So I think that's where you start, really, is looking at why.
Awesome. Paul?
What's coming to mind for me, since I was at that redecision therapy thing last weekend, it's just sticking in my head. And so this is maybe a little bit weird, but not weird, but a little out of the norm. One of the things they had us do was, you're sitting in a chair and you place a chair in front of you, and the person, which could be you, it could be like a younger version of you sitting in the other chair that you're imagining. It could be your dad or whoever. But experiment with this situation. And it could be two people. It could be both your parents or whatever. But experiment with having a conversation with these imaginary people sitting in the chair. And from what I understand, the reason that works, and this redecision therapy, is because in order to get your left brain to actually change, your right brain, or whichever it is, the logic brain, cannot override the emotional brain. And so you actually have to kind of go through the experience again. And so what that does is it sets up, you kind of get in this mode where you are in, I'm a 20-year-old and I'm fighting with my dad or whatever it is. And you have a conversation with them that you'd like to have from your healthy place. And then you switch, and you are them now, and you respond back to that hurt part. And so I guess my advice, that's a long-winded piece of advice, but I guess what I'm saying is to kind of go through that, because it was super powerful to me to sit there as my dad, for example, and talk to my younger self and kind of try to rewrite that and see it from his perspective, even though I didn't know his perspective.
So what I hear you saying is to go back and look at past situations with your current brain.
Actually talk it out verbally out loud to a physical empty chair that has your sitting there.
Got it.
I had an experience like that, and I thought I was completely bonkers. I was in a transformational program that I was coaching, and I was just really stuck on, I had one of my participants the program was stuck on relationships, and it's the exact same point that I was stuck on. So, and I was just determined that I was going to have a breakthrough so that I could provide something for her. So I'm like, okay, so I'm a coach in this program. What do? I'd go to my coach. Okay, so what would my coach say? My coach would then get stuck because I'm stuck, and they would go to their coach. So I sat down and actually had this conversation of Amy as the coach, coaching Amy's coach to coach me. So I had like this hand puppet conversation with myself, right? And it just got me to see the absurdity of what I was dealing with. And I actually, in doing what you said, Paul, worked out what I was dealing with in a conversation with myself and my self's coach, which was myself. Right? It was such a weird
experience. So meta. You're making my head hurt. Just
I know. It was such a weird experience.
Facilitating it. That's why I like the group thing is good, because there's a professional facilitator there doing it. Because it gets wonky, right? It gets kind of crazy. Yeah.
So I'm like having arguments with my own hand puppets, but it was really effective because like you don't really allow yourself to have the opportunity to have a conversation with yourself.
Yep. All right, so I'm going to sum up here. We can keep chatting, but I'm going to sum up so we can end the episode. So Paul's suggesting have a conversation with yourself, literally out loud, have a conversation with yourself from your own perspective and from the perspective of somebody else that you maybe have a challenge or a conflict with. Amy suggesting ask why you haven't historically taken care of yourself. Maya suggested just giving permission to take care of yourself. I would suggest start taking care of yourself. Like pick one little thing. I was working with a relationship coach, Nate Bagley, who's been a guest on the show. He asked me to make a list of my joy makers, things that I could do that just purely gave me joy. And then he gave me the assignment of doing one joy maker a day. And I about flipped my shit because I was like, I got time for that. I got time to do one of these. These are time intensive things: knitting, painting my nails, painting an entire canvas. Who's got time for that, right? And he had to like talk me off the ledge and help me figure out. I know mine are done too. I listened to him. But I do, Paul. So what I got out of that is to knit for a little bit every day, right? Do my nails once every couple of weeks because I enjoy it, but find things that give me joy. And for me, sometimes it's just hugging somebody or feeling my feet in the grass. I had to get a little bit more specific as I went. But my thing would be just start. Pick one thing that gives you joy and do it regularly. So I think there's a lot of ways that you guys can, he just looks like he's sleeping, Mike. He's not acting. It's his default face. It's all good. He's awake.
Just resting his eyes. I know. No, it's getting
late. There's a phone in my lap, and I'm responding to business text messages.
I thought you had your eyes closed. I was like, all right, we gotta wrap up.
No. See, this is my surprise look. You still can't see my eyes. What's your point?
Oh my God. So this is Taboo Talk. We've been talking about me first. The recording is going to be available in about an hour on Blab. I will upload it to YouTube. You can go to tabootalk.us to learn more about the project. I personally am here live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. I have different guests every week. Next week, we're talking about platonic touch. Matt is in the tech chat right now. Actually, he's one of my guests for next week. So it's all exciting stuff. So go to tabootalk.us to check us out. And thank you guys so much for being my guests. I'm going to stop recording and we're going to keep jamming because I think people will still have stuff to say. But thank you so much for joining us this week, guys.